My mother spoke slowly, each word cutting like a knife. Olivia's children eat first. Grace's children will wait for leftovers. The entire room went silent. My sister laughed, scooping more spaghetti onto her child's plate, while Ethan and Lily sat on the kitchen floor, holding 2 cold slices of bread. I stood there, unable to say a word, but I swore they would regret this dinner. Before I get into the story, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Leave your location in the comments below. And if you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will make you want to stand up for yourself. Trust me, you'll want to stay to see what happens next. Let me go back and tell you how a financial advisor who seemed to have everything ended up in that explosive moment. I am Grace Morgan, 34 years old, a financial advisor living in Bellevue Heights, a quiet suburb of Seattle. I used to think my life was stable, a good job, a loving husband, and 2 wonderful children. My husband, David, is an African-American software engineer, quiet but thoughtful. He has those calm eyes I once believed could soothe the entire world. My 2 children, Ethan 8 years old and Lily 6 years old, are my light. Ethan loves drawing, and Lily loves singing. Both have warm, bright brown skin, a blend of ours that I've always found beautiful. But to my family, that seemed to be an unwelcome reminder. I'm the second child in the family. My older sister, Olivia Parker, is 3 years older, once called Mother's Pride. She lives just a few blocks away from our parents. Divorced early but always defended by my mother, as if every mistake she made belonged to the world instead. My father, Robert, is an old-fashioned man, strict and obsessed with appearances. My mother, Patricia, is a woman who lives for reputation and the perfect dinner table. And me, the only one who left the comfort zone. I built her own home, her own career, that her own life. I've always been labeled the busy and distant daughter. I still visited them every weekend, partly so my kids could have their grandparents, partly because I still believed that family could change. Until that evening, an ordinary evening but the beginning of everything. Autumn rain drizzled over Seattle. I got off work late and called my mother. "Mom, I'm coming to pick up the kids." "Have they eaten yet?" she replied quickly. "They have." "Don't worry. Just come straight home. I'll be waiting." I smiled, relieved. She rarely offered to watch the kids longer than a few hours. I didn't know that this unusual gesture was the first sign of a night I would never forget. When I opened the door, the smell of spaghetti flooded out from the kitchen. The sound of clinking silverware mixed with the familiar laughter of my mother and sister. The house was warm and bright, just like always, but something felt different. Something quiet. A subtle shift in the air. I stepped into the dining room. Olivia sat at the center of the table, wearing a blue silk dress, laughing with her daughter Ava and her son Connor. In front of them were steaming plates of spaghetti covered in red sauce. Beside the table, my mother Patricia was serving extra portions, her voice unusually gentle. My father sat in the living room, eyes glued to the TV, a full plate resting on his lap. I looked around for my kids, and my heart sank. Ethan and Lily were sitting on the floor, tucked in the corner. In front of them, 2 plastic plates holding only cold slices of bread. No one even looked at them. I asked softly, my voice low, "Mom, why are Ethan and Lily sitting there? Why aren't they at the table?" My mother kept smiling, not turning around. "Oh, Olivia brought food for the kids. Yours said they weren't hungry." I turned to my son. Ethan lowered his head. Silent. Lily whispered, "I'm hungry." "Mom." My heart clenched. "You heard her." "Mom." "They're hungry." Olivia looked up and gave a faint smile. "Grace, don't make a big deal out of it. The kids are in different age groups. Besides, mine already finished eating, We couldn't wait forever. My father called out from the sofa. Children should learn order. It's called manners. The room went dead silent. Only the faint sound of silverware tapping against porcelain remained. He swallowed hard. Manners. Or are you teaching my children to stand behind others just because they look different? My mother chuckled softly, her eyes full of feigned weariness. Oh, honey. Don't be so sensitive. All the kids are loved equally. It's just dinner. Dinner. A dinner with 2 tables. 2 kinds of plates. 2 kinds of treatment. A dinner where I, a successful financial advisor who paid for most of this house's roof repairs, stood there watching my children eat cold bread on the floor. I no longer recognized my own family. I wanted to scream. To ask, if I stopped sending money every month, would you still call them your grandchildren? But I didn't. I simply bent down, grabbed their jackets. Let's go home. Kids. Ethan took his sister's hand and quietly stood up. No one came to see us off. As I reached the door, Olivia called after me, her tone half-mocking grace. Don't take things so seriously. Kids have to learn to fit in. I stopped, turned around, and looked straight at her. Fit in, or learn to endure humiliation. Then I opened the door and led my children out into Seattle's cold rain. I don't know which moment hurt more, watching my kids eat cold bread, or realizing that in the house I grew up in, the family warmth could feel colder than the rain outside. But I knew one thing: every boundary has its breaking point, and I had reached mine. I didn't argue. I just took my kids and left. But what I discovered afterward made my entire family cry in despair. If you want to understand why I endured for so long, you have to know that I was trained to become my family's personal ATM since I was 17. I got my first job while still in high school, working part-time at a small cafe near campus. When I received my first paycheck, I remember my mother saying, "You're amazing. Sweetheart, maybe you could help me with a bit of the electricity and water bill." I nodded immediately. Back then, I only felt proud. Proud to be trusted. $20. Just $20. But that was the first step on a path I didn't know would lead to where I am now. When I went to college, my mother would often call sweetheart. "Things are tight this month. Your father had to fix the car, and I haven't received my paycheck yet. Can you help us out a little?" When I started working part-time at the library, they texted me, asking to pay the internet bill. When I got my first scholarship, they asked me to front the health insurance payment. I never said no. I remember that feeling clearly. Part love, part guilt. My family made helping feel like a moral duty. Every time I said, "Let me check my account," my mother would sigh. "You're the only one I can depend on." That one sentence was enough to make me grit my teeth and send the money, even when my bank balance was nearly empty. After graduation, I got a job at an investment firm. The starting salary wasn't high, but to my family, the word finance already meant I was rich. My mother called, "Your father needs dental work, and the insurance won't cover it. It's only $1,200. Sweetheart, can you help?" Then it was Olivia's turn, Grace. "My car broke down. You know I need it for work." "Right, just $2,000. I'll pay you back soon." Soon meaning never. I kept helping, again and again, because in my head, the phrase "family helps family" kept echoing. David, who was just my boyfriend then, once asked, "Don't you notice they only call when they need money?" I forced a smile. "They don't have anyone else to rely on." He shook his head, his eyes sad, as if he already knew what was coming. We got married when I was 26. That was when every favor became a system. Every phone call from my mother began with a warm tone, "Sweetheart." I hate to ask this, but, and ended with a 4-digit number. One time it was roof repairs, $5,000. Another time, a medical emergency for my father, $2,300. Then came Olivia's kids' tuition, insurance payments, and car repairs. David didn't intervene. But I knew he wasn't happy. Have you noticed they never ask? How are you? Every call is a request for something. They're my family. I said, and you're their wallet. He replied softly. But it was enough to silence me. I didn't want to believe he was right. Because if he was, that meant my family's love had a price tag. When Ethan was born, my mother came to visit, carrying a white envelope. I thought it was a congratulatory card, but inside was a 3-month overdue utility bill. If it's convenient. Could you pay this for me too? They're threatening to cut the power. I stared at the paper. Feeling hollow, David stood beside me, smiling politely, then gently squeezed my hand. He didn't say a word, but I knew he was holding back his anger. After that day, I paid the bill. Then the next month, I paid their home insurance too, and I told myself, once things get better, they'll pay me back. I didn't know they never planned to. In the years that followed, I got promoted. My income grew, and with it, their needs grew too. Every time I received a bonus, most of it vanished from my account within days. My mother knew my pay schedule better than my own coworkers. Sweetheart, it's urgent. Your sister just lost her job. Don't say no to me. Okay, I sent the money. Your father needs a heart checkup. Insurance didn't cover everything. Help us a little. I sent the money. The roof is leaking again. It's going to rain soon. I sent the money, David said. Have you noticed that it's going to rain soon? Always happens around your payday. I gave a forced smile. You're overthinking it. But deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. When Olivia got divorced, I was the first person my mother called. Help your sister a little. She's struggling. You're the most successful one in the family. You can handle it. I've heard that sentence hundreds of times in my life. The most successful, not a compliment, but a sentence. A verdict that condemned me to keep paying for the guilt they planted. I used to console myself. At least, they're still my family. But David was right. Real love doesn't come with an invoice. I remember one late night. I was checking client emails when a text from my mother came in. Sweetheart, the roof's leaking. I wish you were here. Attached was a picture of their torn roof. Rainwater streaming down. I stared at that image for a long time, not out of pity, but because I finally realized how many years I'd spent chasing that image, an old house. Always leaking. Always needing me to patch it up, while they never once learned to hold a hammer. I believed in family until that night when they let my children eat cold bread. When I saw my kids sitting on the floor, I realized everything I'd done for 17 years meant nothing. I had paid for everything except respect, and I wasn't going to pay for that ever again. I thought I was helping them, but in truth, I was feeding a bottomless pit. And that night, when they let my children sit on the floor, that pit finally collapsed. I didn't know that when I started adding up the numbers. I was about to uncover a truth that would make my entire family fall to their knees. Begging. And it all began with one seemingly harmless phone call the next morning. The next morning, my phone rang. The caller ID read Mom. A part of me wanted to ignore it. But the other part, the one that still believed in something good in the word family, did what it always did. I pressed accept. Good morning. Sweetheart. I just wanted to say, maybe you misunderstood last night. Olivia's upset. She thinks you're angry with her. Mom. I interrupted. My voice steady. I didn't misunderstand anything. Oh. Come on. Grace, everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. Anyway, there's a neighborhood BBQ this weekend. You and the kids should come. It's been so long since we've all gotten together. I was taken aback. Maybe she really wanted to make peace. Thanks. Mom. I'm sure Ethan and Lily would love that. There was hesitation on the other end. Actually, on second thought, That place is a little conservative. You know how the neighbors around here can be. Maybe the kids should stay home. Just to avoid any awkwardness. A quiet silence spread between us. I could hear my heart beat slow. Awkward. For what reason? Mom. Oh. Nothing. Sweetheart, she said softly, keeping her tone light as air. It's just that people aren't used to differences. That's all. Differences. One single word, but it dropped like a stone into a deep well. I said goodbye and hung up, feeling something inside me tighten painfully. 2 days later, I still went to their house. But this time, I observed instead of trying to belong. My mother and Olivia sat in the dining room, discussing the upcoming BBQ. On the table was an open notebook with the guest list relatives, Olivia's old friends, and a few neighbors with status in the area. Ava's going to perform a dance, Olivia said, her eyes gleaming. Connor's entering the swimming contest with his friends. I smiled lightly. Ethan loves swimming too. He could join that group. The air froze. My mother set down her teacup and cleared her throat softly. Oh, that group is a bit traditional. Dear, last year, there were a few complaints. Complaints about what I asked. It's not the children's fault. Of course, it's just that people aren't used to differences. That word again. Olivia's voice slipped in. Smooth as ever. I just don't want to put the kids in an uncomfortable position. You understand? I nodded, forcing a smile. An uncomfortable position? Or are you afraid of being asked why my kids aren't white? No one answered. My mother gave an awkward laugh. Olivia pretended to be busy scrolling through her phone. I looked down at my hands, my fingers clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my skin. I tried to steer the conversation back to normal. But my father was the one who shattered the illusion. He walked in. Newspaper in hand. Speaking evenly, let's not make this a big deal. You have to be realistic. Not everyone is open-minded. If the kids learn that early, it'll save them pain later. I looked him straight in the eye. Are you saying I should teach my children to accept being excluded? No, he said calmly. I'm saying, teach them how the world works. You can't change everyone, but I can change how people treat my kids. He sighed, sounding weary. You've always been stubborn. The world isn't as simple as you think. No, Dad, I replied. It's because it isn't simple that I can't stay silent anymore. At that moment, I realized they didn't think they were wrong. To them, gentle discrimination was a kind of social wisdom. They believed that teaching my children to stay in their place was a form of protection. That afternoon, as I was getting ready to leave, I overheard a conversation in the kitchen. My mother was whispering to Olivia, unaware that I was still on the porch. Poor Grace, she said softly. She's smart, but she chose the wrong man. A white woman marrying a black man. Her kids are bound to suffer. Olivia replied, You're right. Mom, I feel bad for her. But in this neighborhood, people just don't value kids like Ethan and Lily. It's hard to explain to the neighbors. My mother gave a sad little laugh. That's why I say keeping things private is still for the best. I stood there, frozen like a statue. Every word was a cut. I didn't cry. I just looked through the open doorway toward the living room at the family photo they took last Christmas. In it were my mother, father, Olivia, Ava, and Connor. I wasn't there. David wasn't there. Ethan and Lily weren't there. That's when I understood. My kids and I had never truly belonged in this house. They only needed me to patch their cracks like the leaking roof they never bothered to fix. I stepped into the kitchen, making them jump. Don't stop. Go on. I'd like to hear what else you have to say. My mother stammered. Grace, you misunderstood. I was just worried. No need to explain. I understand perfectly. You're worried about appearances. about the neighbors, and about your image. And I'm worried about two children whose own grandmother sees them as a shame. No one spoke. Olivia kept her head down. My mother avoided my gaze. I gave a small, bitter smile. Thank you. At least now I know exactly how much the color white is worth in this house. I turned and walked out. The Seattle wind was cold and salty, like tears that hadn't yet fallen. As I shut the car door, I saw, in the rearview mirror, two silhouettes standing by the window, my mother and Olivia, silent in the yellow glow of the kitchen light. I started the engine and didn't look back. That night, after Ethan and Lily had fallen asleep, I sat beside their bed, watching them huddle close together. I brushed their hair gently and whispered, "I'm sorry for letting you learn such a cruel lesson so soon." In my head, I heard my mother's voice again. People aren't used to differences. I smiled coldly. Then I'll make sure they get used to it. I stood up. Looking out the window, the city lights reflected on the glass, illuminating my face in the dark. I saw in my own eyes no more fear, no more hurt. Only one thing left: the will to protect my children. No matter what it takes. I swear, from now on, no one will ever make my children feel lesser, not even someone named Morgan. I didn't speak to my family for an entire week. No messages, no calls, and strangely enough, that silence made me feel freer than I ever had. My mother sent a few casual texts. "Don't make things so tense. Sweetheart, home is still home." Then, a few days later, Olivia posted a photo from the BBQ party. The caption read, "Perfect family. Perfect smiles." I stared at that picture for a long time. At the dinner table, everyone was smiling brightly. No me. No, David. No, Ethan. No, Lily. And suddenly, I understood. To them, we had long been the stain they needed to crop out of their perfect frame. I turned off my phone. But inside me, a fire began to burn. Not loud. Not smoky, just slow. Steady. And certain. One weekend afternoon, I had to stop by my parents' house to pick up a few things for the kids. Seattle rain fell lightly. The sky, silver gray. As my car pulled up in front of the villa, my heart pounded heavy with both sadness and resolve. The door opened. My mother stood there, her face a mix of worry and pride. "Grace, I'm glad you came. Can we talk, no?" "Mom, I just came to get the kids' things." Ethan ran inside first, smiling innocently. "Grandma, I came to get my toys." My mother gave a forced smile. "Oh, sure. Sweetheart, they're in the living room." My father sat on the sofa, eyes fixed on his newspaper, as if my presence was just a passing breeze. "What are you doing here? Didn't you say you needed time?" I replied calmly. "I did. I needed time not to forgive, but to remember everything." Olivia stepped out from the kitchen, her perfume heavy in the air. "Oh my God. Grace, how long are you going to keep this attitude up? The whole neighborhood's talking." I turned toward her, smiling faintly. "Really? And what are they saying, that I'm rude, or that I dared to stop eating cold bread?" Olivia frowned. "I don't have time for your drama." "You're right," I said, walking closer. "You never have time for anything except performing." The air in the house thickened. I looked around. Everything was as perfect as always. The scented candles, white curtains, crystal glasses, and the family photos on the wall. The perfect family photo without me. I turned to my mother. "Mom, I just want to ask you one thing." "Go ahead." "Dear, do you truly see Ethan and Lily as your grandchildren?" She froze, eyes darting away. "Of course I do. What are you talking about? It's just that the neighbors in this area can be a little conservative. You know that. So you're more afraid of what people think than of hurting your own grandchildren." She spoke softly, almost defensively. I just don't want people gossiping. Gossiping, I gave a bitter laugh. I used to think real love doesn't know shame, but maybe you never truly loved my children. My father folded his newspaper, his voice heavy as a hammer. That's enough. Don't turn this into some racial thing. We're not that kind of people. Really, I looked straight at him. Because people who aren't that kind don't teach children to eat at separate tables or stay silent when they're disrespected. Olivia Coutin. Air voice sharp. Oh, come on. Grace. You always make everything dramatic. You know they didn't mean any harm. No harm, I repeated slowly. When someone hurts others without meaning to, there are only two possibilities. They're either stupid or they're cowardly. No one said a word. The ticking of the wall clock echoed dryly through the room like an offbeat heartbeat. I packed the kids' things. Ethan hugged his old teddy bear and whispered, Mom. Our grandma and grandpa. Sad. I knelt down and looked at him. No. Sweetheart. They just haven't learned how to love people completely. He nodded. Eyes deep with an innocence that made me ache and grow stronger all at once. My mother stood up, her voice trembling. Grace. Don't do this. They're still the kids' grandparents. I tightened my grip on the bag handle. No. Mom. Real grandparents make their grandchildren feel loved, not ashamed for being different. I walked toward the door. My father's voice came after me, cold as steel. You'll see, life doesn't forgive people who cut off their own family. I turned back, meeting his eyes. No. Dad. Life only refuses to forgive those who teach their children to bow to injustice. I opened the door. The sound of it slamming echoed through the hallway heavy. Like the end of an era. Outside, the Seattle rain was falling harder. The kids ran ahead to the car, while I stood there for a second, staring at the house behind me. The warm yellow light from the window blurred through the rain-streaked glass. I didn't feel angry anymore, just empty. I got into the car and started the engine. Ethan held his sleeping sister and looked up at me. Mom. We're still a family. Right. I turned to him, brushing his hair gently. Yes. Sweetheart. We're a family because we choose to love each other, not because we're forced to. The car rolled slowly down the rain-soaked street. In the rearview mirror, my parents' house faded, grew smaller, and then disappeared. I used to think family ties were unbreakable, but tonight, I realized sometimes it's those very ties that keep you bound. I pressed the gas pedal, eyes fixed on the city lights ahead. My inner voice spoke, clear and cold. I don't know what they'll do without me holding everything together, but I know one thing for sure: what I'm going to do next. Leaving that house wasn't just cutting off the past. It was the day I began to tear down the entire system they'd lived off me for 8 years. That night, Seattle's rain never stopped. I came home with cold hands but a mind sharper than ever. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need for anyone to apologize. I just wanted to understand what exactly they owed me. David met me at the door, holding a towel. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes a mix of worry and trust. I already know, he said softly. You don't have to tell me. No. David. I shook my head. You need to hear it, because from now on, everything will change. We sat down on the sofa, only one lamp lighting the room. I recounted the entire confrontation at my parents' house, every word, every look. Not to complain, but to document. My voice was dry, like reading a financial report. When I finished, David said only one thing. I'm not surprised. I'm just sad it took you so long to really see them. I was silent. He was right. I had spent my whole adult life earning money without realizing I was funding an entire system that disrespected me. Night fell. I sat in front of my laptop, the screen's glow reflecting off my tired face. Numbers danced across the monitor transfers. Invoice. Receipts. What I used to call small family matters now looked like a full-blown indictment. I always prided myself on being good with finances. But maybe the only thing I failed to manage was my own blind compassion. I opened my banking folder, scrolling through each month. February $2,000 for roof repair. June $1,800 for Connor's tuition. October $3,000 for Dad's back treatment. Every emergency matched perfectly with my pay or bonus dates. David stood behind me, resting his hand on my shoulder. Do you see the pattern? What pattern they only call when you get a raise or a bonus? They've been tracking your payroll schedule. I froze. Each broken memory suddenly connected into one clear picture, the sweet phone calls. The text that began with, "I hate to bother you. Sweetheart." All of it calculated. I leaned back and let out a short, bitter laugh. So for 8 years, I've been paying salaries to people who think my kids aren't good enough to sit at their table. David sat beside me, his voice low and steady. They didn't just take your money, Grace. They took your sense of worth. I looked him in the eyes. No, they only borrowed it. Now, I'm going to take it back, not with revenge, but with a lesson they'll never forget. The next morning, I called an old friend, Catherine, a financial attorney. She listened for less than a minute before asking, "Grace, are you planning to cut off all financial support?" "Yes." "Then it's simple. You have no legal obligation. Your family isn't financially dependent by law. If they've lived off you, that was their choice, not your duty." I exhaled, feeling as if an invisible chain had just snapped. "Thank you, Catherine. I just needed to make sure I don't owe them anything except the truth." When I hung up, I saw David standing by the door with 2 cups of coffee. "I heard everything," he said with a smile. "You're officially free now." "No, David. Now they're about to learn what losing freedom really feels like." I spent the entire afternoon building a spreadsheet. Using my skills as a financial advisor, I created an Excel file with 8 columns: date, recipient, reason, amount, payment method, repayment, notes, and confirmation. The final number appeared on screen: $127,480. I stared at it, not in pain, but with a mix of fury and pride. This isn't just money. It's the price tag of my dignity over 8 years. David took my hand. "Are you sure you want to cut everything off? If you do, they'll really fall apart." "Exactly. They need to know what free fall feels like without me catching them." I opened my banking app. Under recurring transfers, a list appeared: Mom and Dad, Olivia car loan, house insurance Bellevue. I hovered over each one and clicked cancel. Each click sounded crisp, small, but sharp, like the snip of scissors cutting through the past. They wanted to teach my kids endurance. I whispered, "Now I'll teach them survival without me." That night, as David turned off the living room lights, he asked softly, "How do you feel, lighter?" I said, "But this is just the beginning. They won't understand what's happening, not until everything they depend on starts collapsing." I looked out the window, Seattle shimmering in the dark, its lights reflecting on the glass like the numbers I had just erased. I knew tomorrow would be different. No more the obedient, gentle Grace, but the Grace who could calculate and reclaim every cent she ever gave. I thought cutting the money was where it would end, but I didn't know that decision would trigger a storm my family would never escape from. A week after I cut off all the money flow, the house grew strangely quiet. No more messages. No more urgent calls. Only a few email notifications from the bank landing in my inbox. The sub-accounts registered under Robert and Patricia Parker were now overdue. I knew time would take care of the rest. But then, that Saturday morning, my mother called. Her voice was light as mist. "Grace, I think we should talk. I don't want things to go too far. Come over for lunch." "Dear, it'll just be me. Your father. And Olivia. Our family needs to heal. I listened silently for a few seconds. Then I smiled. All right. Mom, I don't want to drag this out either. She sighed in relief. Good girl. I'll cook your favorite meal. But she didn't know I planned to arrive 30 minutes early. Not to eat, but to listen. That kitchen, once the heart of the house, now felt as cold as an abandoned stage. I stepped quietly, my shoes damp from morning dew. My heart beat slow but steady. Voices drifted from the dining room. Olivia's voice, honestly. Grace overreacted. Turning a dinner into a tragedy, really, my father replied. His chair creaking against the wooden floor. That girl always thinks she's the victim. Smart. Yes. But never knew when to shut her mouth. Then came my mother's voice, soft as if she were pouring tea. I told you. She has to learn to accept things. Some things can't be changed. Mixed kids are still mixed kids. She chose that life. So her children must learn their place. He stood still. Each word dropped like acid on my heart. But instead of burning, it froze me solid. Olivia let out a faint laugh. I do feel bad. Honestly. But you know, her kids just don't fit in. Last year, Ava asked why they had different skin. I didn't even know what to say. Don't blame Ava. My mother said. Kids just speak the truth. It's the adults who have to learn to hide it. I closed my eyes. Hide it. Exactly. That was what they did best. Then they started talking about money. My father sighed. Let's not be mad at her anymore. She'll come back eventually. Have we ever been short of anything Grace always gives in? Olivia chuckled. I bet by next month, when the mortgage payment hits, she'll transfer money like before. That ATM never said no, my mother added sweetly. All I have to do is text a few kind words. And she melts. Great at finance. But still as naive as ever when it comes to emotions. I almost laughed. 8 years of being their interest-free bank. And at least now I finally got to hear them admit it. But then came the sentence that shattered my world for the last time. My mother said it in a calm, terrifyingly casual tone. And honestly, I think it's good the kids ate separately. Olivia's children eat first. Grace's kids wait for leftovers. With mixed families, that's natural. It's about knowing your place. Olivia chimed in. The sooner they learn the order, the easier life will be. My father added, children must understand society's unwritten rules. Olivia's kids eat first. Grace's after, that's proper manners. In that moment, I felt my heart skip a beat. Not from pain, but from clarity. Everything became so unmistakably clear. I could no longer hear the rain outside the window. No longer saw the light reflecting off the kitchen counter. All that existed were 3 voices, 3 people I once called family, classifying my blood and flesh like inferior merchandise. I walked in. Not a sound. They didn't even notice me until I spoke. Order. Huh, I said. My voice cold as steel. Then maybe I should rank myself the lowest for teaching you how to live comfortably off my money. 3 faces froze. My mother blinked. Stammering. Grace, you're early. I was just about to call you for lunch. No need. I've already eaten, in your words. Olivia flushed red, opening her mouth. But I raised my hand. Don't. For 8 years, I've paid $127,000 to this family. You used my money to buy houses, fix cars, throw parties, and now you teach my children to eat leftovers. Tell me who's really been living off scraps. My father tried to keep his voice calm. You misunderstood. Your mother was just no. I didn't misunderstand. I heard every word. And now, I'll make sure you remember every single one at a cost. Money can't repay. My mother trembled, stepping closer, placing her hand on mine. Grace, please. I'm sorry, I was only worried. I pulled my hand away. No, you were worried about reputation, not family. You're more afraid of gossip than of hurting your own blood. And because of that, you're about to learn what it really means to lose a child. I poured myself a cup of cold coffee. I took a sip and set it down. Thank you, Mom, for teaching me the greatest lesson of my life. That kindness can't save those who refuse to change. And that sometimes, silence isn't weakness, it's a declaration of war. Olivia gasped. You can't do this. Grace, they're your parents. No, I said. Eyes glacial. They're people who lived off me. And that game ends today. I turned, hand on the doorknob. When the bank calls, tell them to contact your old ATM, but make sure they know this machine is permanently out of service. The door closed with a soft thud, echoing through the house. Someone sobbed, but I didn't stop. As I stepped out of that kitchen, cold wind whipped against my face, but I didn't feel cold. I felt free, because I knew in that exact moment, the obedient daughter was gone, and a new woman had just been born. I'm no longer their fragile Grace. I am the woman they accidentally created, the one who knows how to turn humiliation into a weapon. I've cut the money flow. Now I'll make them repay every dollar, with the only things they truly fear, reputation and power. A week after that lunch, my house was unnervingly quiet. No more ringing phones. No more urgent messages. Only a few emails from the bank, notifying me that the automatic payments for Robert and Patricia Parker had expired. For the first time in 8 years, my account showed expenses only for my own family. That morning, when I opened my laptop, the notifications appeared. Mortgage overdue 17 days. Insurance payment failed. Late fee applied. I leaned back in my chair. Eyes closed. I don't even need to lift a finger. The whole system will collapse on its own. Because I was the pillar. They never even noticed. David came over, setting a cup of coffee in front of me. Do you feel guilty? I smiled. No. Just calm. Calm. Yes. When you stop saving someone, they'll call you cruel. But the truth is, you've just learned to stop destroying yourself. That afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID read Mom. Grace. There's been a mistake, my mother said, her voice trembling. The bank says our payment's late. The monthly support didn't come through. Can you check it for me? I replied steadily. There's no mistake. Mom, I've stopped all support. What? You can't do that. The house will be repossessed. I can't save a house built on your contempt. And I certainly can't save people who don't respect their own grandchildren. Her voice broke into sobs. You're destroying this family. Grace. No. Mom, I'm just letting it destroy itself. Because anything built on lies can't stand for long. I hung up, my hand steady. No shaking. No satisfaction. Just the sense of an empty space finally being filled with fairness. A few days later, Olivia called. Her voice wasn't sharp and confident anymore. Grace, I just need a small favor. The bank says I need a cosigner to renew my car lease. Or they'll take it back. You have a job and an income. Don't you? I'm tight on cash. If I lose the car, I'll lose clients too. You understand? Image is everything. I chuckled softly. You're right. Image is everything. Now the neighborhood will finally see the real image of you walking to that luxury hair salon. Grace, don't be cruel. I'm not cruel. I'm fair. Remember when you said Ethan and Lily didn't fit in with this neighborhood? Well, now it's you who doesn't fit. I ended the call. No satisfaction. Just peace. I'm not taking revenge. I'm just letting consequences find their rightful address. 2 weeks later, my father showed up at my door. He no longer wore a suit or a gold watch. Just a tired old man holding his hat. Eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. Grace, we need to talk. I think we've already said enough. You don't understand. Everyone at the club knows. They're saying you're ungrateful, that you've disgraced your parents. Really? Then they finally know who actually paid for the house you bragged about as your life's achievement. He stared at me, lips trembling. You wouldn't dare tell them. I didn't have to. They figured it out themselves when they saw the foreclosure sign planted in front of that proud, fancy house. He swayed, his eyes reddening. I looked at him, not with anger, not with pity, just sadness. You always taught me that honor was priceless, but honor can't be bought with your daughter's money. After that, everything fell like a row of dominoes. The house was seized. Olivia's BMW was towed away in broad daylight, while the neighbors whispered. My mother stopped going outside too, ashamed to even take out the trash. The same people who once laughed so loudly at dinner parties couldn't lift their heads now. My voice echoed in my mind, like a montage narration. When I stopped being their pillar, everything they built on pride and pretense collapsed faster than I imagined. Turns out, I wasn't the lesser child. I was the foundation they all stood on. One afternoon, as the Seattle sunlight faded, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID read Mom. I hesitated for a few seconds, then picked up. Her voice was hoarse and fragile, a mix of pride and despair. Grace, I'm not calling for money. I just wanted to ask, could the kids come over and visit? I was silent for a while. I'll think about it. But remember, mom love can't be bought with money, and it can't be demanded with tears. On the other end, she broke down crying. But this time, I didn't hang up out of anger. I listened, because for the first time, her crying wasn't laced with arrogance. That night, David and I sat together on the balcony. The city below glowed like a distant painting. David asked, "How do you feel? Peaceful, but not vindictive? Do you think they'll change? Maybe. People only truly learn when they lose what they thought was permanent." I looked up at the sky. I'm not angry anymore, but I haven't forgotten either. Forgiveness isn't letting someone hurt you again. It's choosing to stop hurting and move forward. The cold wind brushed through my hair. I closed my eyes, feeling every old debt of money, of tears, to have pride dissolve with each breath. I thought it was over, but I didn't know that when they hit rock bottom, another call would come, opening the door to remorse and redemption. A month had passed since the day I stopped all financial support. Life was so peaceful that sometimes I barely recognized how many years I'd spent living in chaos. No more ringing phones demanding something. No more fake cries for help. Only the laughter of Ethan and Lily in the garden, and the quiet breath of peace I'd built for myself. I thought it was all over. Until one Tuesday morning. My phone rang, and the screen lit up with one word: Dad. I hesitated for a few seconds. Then I answered. His voice was hoarse, as if he'd just walked through a storm. "Grace, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I'm listening. Your mother, she's in therapy. She said you were right. About what? About everything. About how we treated love like a transaction, and you like a bank that was never allowed to close." I was silent. It had been so long since I'd heard his voice sound that honest, no control. No. Pride. Just exhaustion and truth. Before hanging up, he added quietly, "If you're willing, your mother wants to send you something." That afternoon, the mailman brought a beige envelope. The handwriting on it, one I'd seen 1,000 times, was unmistakably my mother's comedy. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, nearly 3 pages long. The ink had bled in places, uneven, as if her hand trembled while writing. "My daughter, I once believed I was teaching you responsibility, but I see now I only taught you to carry responsibility for everyone, except yourself. I turned your kindness into obligation, and your love into an endless supply line. When you cut us off, I thought I lost money, but I truly lost you. I'm sorry for letting my grandchildren learn what discrimination feels like inside their own home. If you can't forgive me yet, I understand. But I'll try to change, not to earn back your support, but to deserve the love you once gave. I read every line again. Tears fell onto the paper, not out of pity, but because, finally, she said the words I'd waited my whole life to hear. Real remorse. No longer hidden behind pride. A week later, I got a text message. Can we meet? Grace, at the Dock Cafe. Tomorrow afternoon. It was from Mom. I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed back, okay. It was drizzling. When I stepped into the cafe, they were already there, my father, my mother, and Olivia. No fur coats. No llevelre. None of that usual arrogance. Just 3 people who looked small and lost. We sat down. No one spoke for several minutes. Then my mother began. Thank you for coming. I don't expect forgiveness right away. I just want to understand how I could have been so blind. I looked at her. My tone calm, because you were used to being loved without having to understand. You thought silence meant peace, but for me, silence was the way you made pain look acceptable. My father lowered his head. I used to think I was strong, but really, I was a coward, too afraid to stand against the prejudices I knew were wrong. Dad, I interrupted gently. You never had to say this. But today, I want you to know, true strength isn't in power, it's in taking responsibility. Olivia took a deep breath. Her eyes red. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I've lost everything: my job, my friends, my reputation, and only then did I realize how strong you had to be to endure without breaking. I never wanted you to break. Olivia, I just wanted you to understand what it felt like for me and my children. To be taught by our own family that we were the ones who ate leftovers. Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry. Truly, not as an excuse, but as truth. I set my coffee cup down and looked at them, the 3 people who had once been the greatest source of my pain. My voice didn't tremble, but it was softer than before. I don't hate you, Mom, or you, Olivia, but I'll never go back to how things were. From now on, if we meet, it will be because we want to, not because we need to. If you want to see Ethan and Lily, then let them see that you've truly changed, not through words, but through actions. No one spoke. They just nodded. And in that moment, I realized for the first time in my life, they were listening. When I stepped out of the cafe, the rain had stopped. The late afternoon light fell on the wet pavement, glimmering like a mirror. Seattle seemed gentler after the long storm. I looked up at the sky and whispered to myself, I once thought revenge was the only way to restore justice. But real justice is when those who did wrong finally face their own reflection. And sometimes, forgiveness isn't about saving them, it's about freeing yourself. David was waiting outside by the car. He took my hand gently. Everything okay? I said, not because they've changed, but because they can't hurt me anymore. I looked through the car window. Inside, Mom was wiping her eyes. Dad resting his hand on Olivia's shoulder. A family once broken now learning how to be human again. I thought it ended there, but a year later, when I received an invitation from someone I never expected, I realized the journey toward justice was never truly over. A year had passed. Spring in Seattle was warmer now. The sky clear as glass. Freshly washed after a long rain. Ethan was 10. Lily had just turned 8. Our small house was filled with morning sunlight and the sound of birds through the window. I was making coffee when the mailman knocked. In his hand was a spotless white envelope. No sender, listed only embossed letters that read, "The Morgan Family Invitation." I opened it. Inside was an elegant card. The words pressed in gold foil. You are cordially invited. Grace Morgan and family. To the launch ceremony of the Resilience Fund, a scholarship foundation for biracial children and single-parent families, founded by Robert and Patricia Parker. I stared at it for a long moment. My heart trembled not with shock, but with a strange calm. My parents, the very ones who once said, "Olivia's children eat first. Grace's children can wait for leftovers," were now founders of a scholarship fund for children exactly like mine. David walked in, holding his laptop. "It's them, isn't it?" "Yes," I said softly, setting the invitation on the table. "You think they're doing it out of guilt?" "No." I smiled faintly. "Out of awakening." He nodded. "You'll go, of course. Not to be acknowledged, but to show my children that sometimes the right thing can grow from what was once wrong." The ceremony took place at the university auditorium, sunlight pouring through tall glass panels, glinting off a banner stretched across the stage, "Resilience Fund, turning pain into power." I entered with David, Ethan, and Lily. No curious glances this time. No whispers. Only genuine smiles and polite nods. On stage, my mother stood behind a wooden podium, her hand trembling around the microphone. I'd seen her speak confidently at hundreds of social events. But today, for the first time, her voice shook because of emotion, not performance. A year ago, we lost everything. But thanks to the courage of our daughter, we learned that love has no color, only hearts big enough to embrace it. My father stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. His voice was low and choked. "We created this fund to make sure no child ever has to eat leftovers in their own home again." Applause filled the hall long, warm, and sincere. I looked at them, two people who had once caused me a pain I thought I could never forgive now, bowing before the very values they once denied. Olivia sat in the front row, dressed simply, her eyes glistening. She met my gaze and gave a small nod. No words were needed. I understood. Sometimes, redemption doesn't need to be spoken aloud. After the ceremony, a little girl, maybe 12 years old, approached me. Her skin was brown, her hair curly, and her eyes as bright as a midsummer night. "Ms. Grace." "Right, yes." "Sweetheart, I got the scholarship from your fund. I just wanted to say, I'll work hard to deserve it." I knelt down, smiling gently. "Not to deserve it for me, but for yourself. Because you've just proven something important. Sometimes, the ones who were once looked down upon are the very ones who bring hope to the world." As we left the hall, Ethan squeezed my hand. "Mom, Grandpa and Grandma did this because of you." "Right, no. Honey, they did it for themselves because they wanted to fix what they once broke." Lily asked softly, "So, have you forgiven them?" I looked at my children, their eyes shining in the sunlight. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Sweetheart, it's when you can look back and it doesn't hurt anymore." David walked beside me, his hand gently finding mine. "Are you okay, I am? Because today, I'm no longer the one who was hurt. I'm the one who turned pain into strength." Later that afternoon, when everyone had gone, I stayed behind. The last light of day stretched across the courtyard. I walked to the corner where a new brass plaque gleamed on the wall. "Grace Morgan Resilience Fund, established 2025 inches, honor of those who turned pain into power." I reached out and touched the engraved letters. The metal was cold, but my heart felt warm. "The day you taught me silence, I learned endurance. The day I taught you to listen, you learned love. And today, we are both free." A soft breeze passed by, carrying the faint scent of cherry blossoms. The Seattle sky was so clear I could see my reflection in the plaque, not the woman who had once been broken, but the one who rebuilt herself. David came up behind me, his arm wrapping around my shoulders. "Is it over?" he asked. I smiled gently. "No, but at least this time, the ending is mine." I looked up at the sky. Sunlight pierced through the clouds. glinting off the brass plaque like a blessing. I once thought revenge was victory, but now I know true victory is when you can still love, even after love has hurt you. If you've ever been wounded by your own family, remember sometimes what you need isn't revenge, but the strength to walk forward with the dignity of someone who finally understands their worth.